Sultans of Swift. I hope you're ready to stack on the learning, because in this lecture we're going to talk about stack views to improve the layout of your user interface. We are going to be taking just a brief step away from our You Are Awesome app to introduce another demonstration app, and that's because at this stage in your Swift career there are a lot of other cool things that you should be learning about that aren't going to fit into You Are Awesome. And specifically, we will talk about stack views, and you'll have a chance to do stack views inside of stack views. We'll create an IBAction that works across multiple buttons. We'll talk about senders. We'll talk about tags. We'll introduce arrays for the first time that use something other than strings. We'll talk about optionals and optional unwrapping using force unwrapping. And we'll introduce compound conditionals with the logical and. Ready for big learning? Let's giddy up. And in this video, we're going to create a new project. So why don't you open up Xcode? It'll be a single view iOS app. I'm going to give mine the product name ButtonsAndStacks. It should be a Swift storyboard project. I'm going to save mine to the desktop. Make sure I've got a Git repository, and we're ready to go. I'll double-click title bar to expand Xcode, click on main storyboard, and I'm going to lay out this app on an iPhone SE, which would be the smallest device I'd run this app on. Now, the first few steps are all things we've done before. I'll click on library, I'm going to drag over a label, I'm going to position it in the upper left-hand corner of my view controller, drag down, and you know what? I'm going to constrain this. And so with label clicked, go down in the lower right and click on add new constraints. And we'll set the height to 150 and add one constraint. And with label selected, I'm going to make sure that I'm in the attributes inspector, and I'll align it center. I'm going to click on font. I'll select large title from the system fonts, click done, and change the text to read, this will be a color. And this will just be a placeholder. I'll eventually get rid of this. And now I'm going to add my color buttons. I'll click on library, drag over a single button. I'll set the title to red. I'm going to click the size inspector and set the width to 85. Then I'll click my button, make sure it's selected so I see the handles there, and then I'm going to press Command D 6 times because I want 7 buttons, one for each of the colors in Roy G. Biv: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Then I'm going to click on each button and I'm going to change the title to the color that I want, but also I'm going to go down here into the tag area and increment that by 1 for each color. So orange is going to be 1, yellow is going to be 2, green 3, blue 4, indigo 5, and violet 6. Now I'll speed this up. You'll know what to do. I'm just going to place my 3 buttons, red, orange, yellow, in a top row, green in the middle, and blue, indigo, violet in the bottom row. So 3 rows of buttons, 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, green in the middle. So not surprisingly, if I click to see what the layout would look like on a larger iOS device, it looks terrible. So let's go ahead and fix that. I'm going to go back to the iPhone SE. And what we're going to do is we're going to lay out the buttons and we're going to get them to move together by putting them in something called a stack view. So I'm first going to highlight the 3 buttons in this first row, and we'll create one horizontal stack view with the 3 of them embedded in it. So we can go down here to this embed icon in the lower right-hand corner. You get a bunch of menu options, select stack view, and we see the buttons bunched together. We'll fix that in just a bit, but also look in the document outline. You see something that says stack view, and we no longer see button red, orange, yellow. There's an exposure triangle. We'll show you where those are in just a bit. But let's create another stack view by highlighting blue, indigo, violet, going down to embed again and selecting stack view. Same sort of thing happens. And in the doc outline, what we see is those 3 buttons have disappeared. They're just inside the stack view and hidden by the exposure triangle. And so we've got 2 stack views, one for red, orange, yellow, one for blue, indigo, violet. And we say that these are horizontal stack views because they control the horizontal layout of the items that are inside of them. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to embed the label, the 2 stack views, and the green button in a vertical stack view, top to bottom. And I'll do that by dragging the selection box around all of those items. And let's take a look at the document outline. We see 4 items selected: the label, the first stack view, the green button, and the second stack view. And if I click the exposure triangles, we can see what's inside the first and second stack view. There are buttons. So now with all of these selected, I'm going to go back down to the embed icon in the lower right, click and select stack view, and I see these guys line up vertically in a vertical stack view. So now what's great about all of these stack views is I can constrain the outer stack view and everything else will reposition itself. So I'm going to make sure that I've clicked the outer stack view in the document outline. It's good to use the document outline because sometimes you think you're clicking a stack view and you might really be clicking an object. And then with that top stack view selected, I'm going to go to the lower right-hand corner and add new constraints. And I'm going to set top, left, and right to 16. That's a nice iOS device margin. And it's always good to make sure that you've got 3 red lines in here for your 3 constraints, and the button says add 3 constraints. Sometimes you can type in the box and a red line indicator doesn't show up, so if it's not there, just make sure you clicked all 3. And the button should properly say add 3 constraints. It does. I'm going to click it. Those constraints are added, and look at my stack view is resized. Nice. Now notice my stack view is selected. In the attributes inspector, it says the attributes for the stack view. And you can play with some of these options to experiment and see how they change the layout. But I'm going to go up under here under alignment where it says center, and I'm going to select instead fill. And look what happens to the objects vertically. They all move out to fill the width of the stack view. Now the vertical stack view looks good, but the 2 horizontal stack views look kind of crummy. They're not evenly laid out. The red button's taking up too much room in one stack view and violet's taking up too much room in the other. So I'm going to click on the first stack view where red, orange, yellow are contained. So over here in the document outline, you see how this is selected. It's that second stack view, and that stack's exposure triangle is pointing downward, so you can see there's red, orange, yellow inside it. And up in the attribute inspector, it says I'm looking at a stack view, and I'm going to select the distribution attribute. It currently says fill, but I'm going to select fill equally. We see the buttons then take up the equal amount of space. Looks much better. And I like that so much, I'm going to go over to the document outline, click on the second horizontal stack view, and change that distribution to fill equally too. Looking great. Now the green button is in the middle, and currently that button is spanning the width of the entire iOS device. Now that might not be what you want, because that's a much larger click surface than the other button. Now why does it look this way? Well, we set the vertical stack view's alignment to fill. It was center. Now fill looks good for everything except for this one button, but unfortunately you can't set the individual elements of a stack view to be aligned differently. But this is what we can do. We'll keep fill, but we're going to take the green button. So notice I've selected green. We're going to embed it in its own stack view. Then we're going to take this singular stack view that green is in, and now the green button is inside this singular stack view, and this single stack view is now filled to the edges of the vertical alignment, just like the button. But then inside this stack view that just has the green button, we'll reset the alignment to center. This looks perfect. Almost perfect. Wanted to make the green button the same size as the others, so I'll click on green, go down here to set new constraints, and set the width to 85. Nice. And all these things look good on an iPhone SE. Let's see how they would look on a larger iOS device, and boom, they look fantastic on the larger device. Let's go back to the SE. And so with the user interface looking exquisite, let's head back over to the view controller and type a little bit of code. Now what I want to do is I want to create an array called colors, and I want this to hold the different colors. Now we haven't done this before, but an array can hold any object. And up until now, we've just used objects of type string, but we could put ints in there, doubles, and you can even put UIColors in there. Let's give it a try. Now remember how we first typed in colors, we used the enumeration behind UIColor. So if we do UIColor dot, we can type in red, comma UIColor dot blue. And now here's another trick. If we put a colon right after the variable name, and then we declare the type explicitly. So if we say bracket UIColor bracket, that says, hey, the variable colors is an array of UIColor. And then if we go back over here, we don't even have to type the UIColor part. We can just do the dot enumerations, like dot orange, and that shows up without having to put UIColor in front. It's a little nicer to read, so I'm going to delete these first 2 colors and do dot red. And I shouldn't have put blue in here. I'm out of order. And then I'll fill out the rest. Dot yellow, dot green, dot blue. There's not an indigo, but there's a dot system indigo. That'll work fine. And there's not a dot violet either, but there is a purple. And why don't we select system purple? And all these are separated by commas. And on my Xcode code color preferences, they all show up with that nice purple formatting so that Xcode points out, yes, they are legitimate types. Cool. I'm going to get rid of this green comment. I don't need that there. And we're ready to link our user interface to our code. So we want to get into assistant editor mode. I've got viewcontroller.swift up. I'm going to option click on main storyboard. They're side by side. First up, why don't we create an IB outlet for our label? So I'll control drag from the label. You want to be really careful and make sure that you've got the label and not the stack view. I'll let go. It pops up as an outlet. I can see the type says UI label. Excellent. Color label is what I'll call this, lower camel case, connect. And then I'm going to create an IBAction. Now I'm going to make sure that I've clicked on the red button, so that's just the button, not the stack view. Sometimes when your interface gets more complex and it's tougher to make sure you're clicking on one button versus the other, it's easier to do this control drag from the document outline than the interface itself. Control drag over. I'll let go just before the last curly brace. Our connection is an action. Perfect. Let's give it the name color button pressed, lower camel case. And under type, make sure that we select it and it says UI button. Then click connect. And that looks good. It's created our IBAction. It's a function. Now you might be thinking, okay, well I need to do this for the other 6 buttons, but no, we're going to show you a new technique. We're going to do the same thing with each button press. We're going to take the title of that button, put it in our label, and change the label to that text color. And since we're doing the same thing with every single button, we can attach this function to all of those other buttons. And the way that we do that is just click in the filled in circle to the left of the function definition, where it says IBAction. You'll see the rubber band created, and make sure that you let go inside of the button you want to connect. So we'll connect orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. I've obviously sped that up, but you can double check your work by hovering over the filled in circle, and you'll see over on the right hand side, all the buttons that IBAction are connected to have a little highlighting next to them. And now with this IBAction connected to all 7 color buttons, why don't we start out by printing out the tag that they're associated with. This way we can be sure we can identify each of those 7 buttons, numbers 0 through 6. So I'll type in my print statement, and let me show you what we're going to leverage. You see this word sender here? Well, sender is actually a constant that's linked to the button that we clicked on to execute this IBAction function. Notice after sender it says that it's of type UI button. So we can actually refer to this thing sender inside this function, and after the click, since you clicked that button is sender for the duration this function executes, and that means you can access all of the properties of that clicked button using dot notation, including the tag. Let's see. I'll enter the string uClickedTag number, and then string interpolation inside, and inside the string interpolation I'm going to type in sender dot. Look, all these properties show up that are associated with a UI button. Is tag in here? Oh yeah. Press return, build and run. Let's take a look at the results. And you know what? I was designing on an iPhone SE. Why don't we go up here and simulate a larger iOS device just to see how our stack view looks on that. Build and run. I trimmed the wait time out of the video. Let's click on red and it shows up uClickedTag number 0. Orange 1, yellow 2, green 3, blue 4, indigo 5, violet 6. Everything is working great. Sender is properly picking up the tag of the button it was clicked on. Wonderful work. Now let's leverage this to show the actual color and the name of the color in our label. Now first let's tackle the name of the color, and we're going to get the name of the color from the button title. So we're going to type in print, and inside the parentheses, how about sender dot. And we didn't specifically say how you could get access to that, but I'm going to type in .title and see what shows up. Sure enough, I see a lot of different options down here. One says current title. I'm going to move my cursor down so that that's highlighted. The description says the current title that is displayed in the button. That is precisely what I want, but I also want you to pay attention to the question mark. We've been ignoring those up until this point, but now it's going to be important. So it says string question mark, not just string. So press return to accept this, we'll build and run, and let's see what shows up when we print to the console. I cut out the wait time, here's our app, let's click on red, optional red, what is that? Orange, optional orange, yellow, optional yellow, what is that all about? Well, here's the scoop, and this concept of optionals is a little tough for developers to wrap their heads around, and we'll return to this concept of optionals for more discussion in the future, but this is a good time for us to introduce it. Now in Swift we say that a value that contains nothing is nil. Now, nil is different from 0. 0 actually is a value. It's a number, but a nil is an absence of value. There was no value attributed to it. You expected something, there's nothing in there. Nil is also different from the empty string. So an empty string with just 2 double quotes and nothing in the middle is actually a string of length 0. But nil means nothing at all has been assigned to that value. There's nothing inside. It's like a black hole, absence of data. Now, a value that could be nil, meaning an absence of value, or it could have a legitimate value. In Swift, we refer to these as optionals. Now, Swift does this because a huge portion of errors that occur in computing are the result of not dealing well with things that could have nil in them or an absence of value. So Swift requires you to be very explicit if something might not have anything inside of it. Now, we'll have more on this later, but for now, if you see the question mark after a type, that's Swift's way of saying, hey, this could be a real type with a real value in it, but it might not. It might contain nothing. It might be nil. Now, when we take a look, and if you option click on top of current title, you actually see that current title says it's a string with a question mark. So this is an optional value. It might be a string, or it might be nil. Now, you might look at this and say, hey, how could a button have a current title that's nothing? Well, we haven't seen this yet, but Apple actually lets developers create buttons that have no title, but that use an image. There are other reasons for this as well. So we'll see as we explore optionals more that there are sometimes legitimate reasons for there to be nothing inside of a data structure. So what can we do about it? Well, for now, if we are 100% confident that the value is not nil, that there's something in there, then we can do something called force unwrapping. That looks inside the optional value, digs inside, and actually pulls out whatever's in there. Now what that does is it gets rid of this little optional that we saw when it printed, and we'll have the real value. Now you've got to be careful. I said you've got to be 100% confident, because if we were to force unwrap something, look inside, and there was an absence of value, that would give us a runtime crash. Our app would crash completely. But we are 100% certain now that our buttons have a title, because we gave them each a title. They each have that title from red through violet. So we're going to use the exclamation point to force unwrap and get rid of that word optional when we print. Let's do it. So back in our code, let's option click on sender.currentTitle, where the type is Xcode says it's string ? Swift is saying, hey, you know, this might have nil in it, an absence of value. We are 100% certain that no, there is a title in there. We will use exclamation point to force unwrap. We'll build and run. Speed up the load. Click on red, orange, yellow. We see they're showing up as red, orange, and yellow. No optional around them, so this would look good inside of our label. Let's get back into viewcontroller.swift. Right under the print line, we'll type in colorLabel.text equals the string you clicked, and then in string interpolation. We'll come up here and we'll copy this whole sender.currentTitle exclamation point piece, come down and paste it in between the parentheses of string interpolation. I don't need that print statement, so we'll delete that. We'll build and run. I'll speed up, and we see you clicked red, you clicked orange, you clicked yellow, you clicked green, you clicked violet. This is looking perfect. Our force unwrapping works wonderfully. We got one more thing we want to do. We want to change the color. And remember, we've got a color array up here, and it's got all 7 of our colors listed in here. Remember what we know about tags. Remember what we know about accessing elements of an array using an index. See if you can solve this on your own to change color label's text color based on the button that was clicked. So you ready to pause? Pause. Hopefully you solved it. Resume. So all those elements in the color array, since there's 7 elements, they're indexed from 0 to 6. And hey, our buttons have the tags from 0 to 6. So we can go in here and say colorLabel.textColor equals colors in brackets sender.tag, and that's going to give us a UI color which is specific to that element. Build and run. Let's see if this works. If we click on it, we see we've got to clear out our this will be a color placeholder text, but if we click on all of them, look at the colors changing. You are painting the rainbow. Fantastic. Let's do one more thing. Let's create a clear button that will clear out the text, and also let's get rid of the placeholder text in color label. So let's return to our code, get into assistant editor mode. So I'll click on view controller, option click on main storyboard. So these 2 files are side by side. I'll double click on color label and press delete to get rid of the text that's in there. And now let's add a clear button. So I'll bring up my library, click and drag a button over here. I'll just double click on the button and then type in a new name, clear. Then I'm going to go over here into the size inspector for this button. And I can go ahead and use auto resizing. I don't have to add it to the stack view. I'm going to set auto resizing so just this outer lower center line is selected. And that will anchor this button in the center. At the bottom of my view, I'll set the width of this button to 85. I'll position the clear button again to recenter it. Let's just see how this would look on a larger iPhone. It's looking fantastic. Now let's go back to the iPhone SE. And, you know, I could create another IBAction specifically for this clear button. But just to illustrate a point about compound conditionals, let's use the same IBAction we have for the clear button. So first, any new button that we create is going to have a tag 0. Let's change the tag to 1000. The tags don't have to be ordered. 1000 really sets us apart from any colors. And if we add more buttons and colors and we increment the tag by 1 and add one more element in the array, we probably don't have to worry about hitting 1000. Great. And now we've set our clear button to tag 1000. And so if this button with the tag 1000 is clicked, what do we want to do? Let's set colorLabel.text equal to the empty string. So first, let's type in our condition, if sender.tag equals 1000, open and close curlies, and then let's do the else condition first. So open and close curlies here. I'm going to cut out these two lines down here, which were working great for all of the buttons being pressed, paste those into our else condition. And so that's what's going to happen for any button where the sender tag does not equal 1000, or where sender.tag equals 1000 is false. We're going to set the text to say, you clicked whatever the current title of that button is that you clicked, and we're going to set the text color to the color array element indexed at the same number as the button's tag. And then for our true condition, if the button's tag 1000, we'll just set colorLabel.text equal to empty string. And we don't care about the text color because we can't see it, and it'll be reset next time a color button's clicked. So let's build and run. And oh, you might have noticed the error that we had in here that I missed. We did not attach our new clear button to this IBAction. So when I click clear, it doesn't do anything, and it doesn't do anything because there's not an action tied to the button. No connection. So let's go back over to this assistant editor view, and now watch. If I hover my cursor over this filled in button to the left of the color button pressed function definition, we can see all 7 of the color buttons are highlighted over on the right in Interface Builder, but clear button isn't. So that means we got to click and drag from the filled in circle in our IBAction into the clear button. Now that button is connected. Now our code will work. Now build and run. So here's our app. Click a few color buttons, looking good, click clear, and clear clicks out. Nice, everything is working great. And now I want to rewrite this if statement because I said that I wanted to show you compound conditionals. So let's get back into our code. I'll give myself a few blank lines in between the print statement and the start of the if statement. So this allows us to introduce a little bit more on if statements. I'm going to write a new statement which is going to do the same as the one below it. So I'll say if sender.tag, and the condition we want to test for is if the sender tag is in between 0 and 6. And this is the way we can write that. If sender.tag greater than equal, which means if it's greater than or equal to 0, and the other condition I'll type in here is sender.tag less than or equal to 6. And then open and close curlies. So we want both this left side here, sender tag greater than or equal to 0, and the right-hand side, sender tag less than or equal to 6, to both be true. So what we want is the left side and the right side to be true. And we call this a compound conditional because we're testing more than one condition on a single line of the if statement. In some programming languages, you just write the word and in here, but in Swift, we put 2 ampersands or 2 and signs in here. One after the other, no space. And what that means is this whole part will be true if the left side and the right side are both true. And just for reference, and for those students that have the textbook, it's right in the reference below this video. And I do hope you find the textbook useful. You can find out more about it at gallagher.com/Swift. This is a truth table, and it shows you the conditions that need to be true if you're using the logical and. And these characters that create the compound conditional are referred to as the logical and. So the only time when you have truth is when the left side and the right side of the logical and are both true. If either side is false or both of them are false, it'll register as false. Now there's also a logical or, and you get that by typing 2 vertical bars. Now on the US keyboard, the vertical bar is just above the return key. That's Shift \\. So you can take a look at your keyboard and see where that is. It's an unusual character. You usually don't type it, and you've got to type 2 of them. But those 2 vertical bars will act as or, and the way the logical or works is if either the left side or the right side is true, then the whole statement is true. So when you use a logical or, the only way the statement registers as false is if both sides are false. Now you can also have more than one condition that you're evaluating in an if statement, but if you do, it's good programming practice to use parentheses. It'll make your if statement a lot easier to read. And you might decide to pull up a playground and test out some of these concepts, but I felt like now was a good opportunity to introduce the logical and I thought putting some code for the clear button inside of our function was a good way to do that. So now back in our code, I'm going to take what was previously our false condition. I'll copy these 2 lines and paste them in. This will be the true condition of our new if statement that has the compound conditional with the logical and then I'll highlight and copy this one line that was part of the true clause in the original if statement that clears out colorLabel.text, and I'll put that in the false condition of the new if statement, and then I'll comment out the old if statement by highlighting it and doing a command /. Let me give myself a little bit more room here so we can see just the code. Stop execution, build and run, and orange, red, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and clear. Everything is working magnificently. Another video where we learned a ton. We talked about stack views. We implemented several stack views inside stack views. We added a bunch of buttons into a single IBAction. We learned about sender. We learned about the tag property. We created an array of colors the first time we created an array of something other than strings. We introduced you to optionals. We learned about force unwrapping optionals with an exclamation point, and we learned about compound conditionals with ampersand ampersand. Coder, you are getting skilled. Keep at it.